Now, death takes center stage in our next interview. It's in the form of a 600-year-old play written by a man who has just seen his wife die.
The play, Death and the Ploughman, was written by Johann von Sars, who lived in the era of the early Renaissance.
And despite being written some 6 centuries ago, the play's theme remains universal in the age-old cry of why death needs to be present in life.
Death and the Ploughman, performed by the SITI company in the US, will have its Asian premiere next week at the Singapore Arts Festival. And this morning we meet 2 members of its cast, actors Ellen Lauren and Will Bond. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Now, the script we hear is some 600 years old. So has the original script been changed, and is it still relevant to today?
Well, one of the unique things about it is that it's not a script originally. It wasn't written to be performed. It was a real document, a real cry of pain and anguish on a Johannes von Sass's part, who lost his wife. And subsequently it was buried in his desk and found by a friend and was passed around the community, and over the next few hundred years sort of got an underground following as this remarkable document. It wasn't performed as a play until the 1960s in Paris, and again became a very cult underground hit. We're the first U.S. premiere of this.
What is so extraordinary about this story that it was accepted and, delivered in the form of a play to the audience today?
Well, what's so extraordinary about it is that it's a document written on the cusp of the Renaissance of the time in Bohemia. So, in a sense, as a work of art, it is the line between the Middle Ages and the birth of the human spirit, such as we know it today. So, in that sense, it's extraordinary. It was written in a moment, out of a cry of anguish, and is a human document that actually marks the evolution of the human spirit, in a sense. So it's remarkable.
But that era was like centuries ago.
Yeah.
Do you think audience today will, I know death is a universal subject, but will they be able to relate to, the story that was said in those times?
I think so. Art has a privilege with time. You receive a painting at the same velocity at the time it was painted, be it 1,000 years ago or 10 years ago. It's the same with this piece. It has such a power and energy behind it that in fact, it's all we can do to keep up with it. It's very modern. It's very contemporary. The language, and who knew that the sciences and the arts were so developed at the time this guy wrote.
Well, the question he's asking is death and why it needs to occur. I mean, does the story eventually resolve this issue?
Well, I don't know if you can resolve the issue of death. I mean, if it's even an issue. The man loses his partner. I think resolution is not the interesting thing. The arguments, the sum of the arguments actually is more interesting than what they say to each other. So I think the man, this human being, becomes a better person by having to meet something greater than himself. Do you know what I mean? So the best is asked of him, and the way, it seems to me at least, the way you deal with death is turn to life.
Right.
So he becomes better and learns grace, I think, ultimately.
Well, Ellen, you take on 3 voices in this performance. One is the ploughman's dead wife, and then the voice of the dead, and the voice of God. Now, how challenging is that? How did you prepare yourself for this role? It
was very challenging to figure out how to build the structure of that in a rehearsal. But the actual performance of it, it's something that we do all the time. If we're on the telephone conducting business and our kid is tugging at our leg, we're able to be those 2 people simultaneously.
Right.
And so for me, it's just accessing something that we actually do all the time very naturally and featuring that and bringing that aspect out on stage.
Actually, the play is, death is a rather somber topic. But does it get lighthearted? Will we see quirky moments, a bit of humor here and there?
The answer is yes. I don't think of it so much as a dark play, but there are certainly some intended light moments. Yeah.
Okay. It's a bit of a game. It's a bit of a game. And live theater is always such a risky thing anyway, because at any moment it could go awry.
Right.
The whole
Has
thing
that
is
happened
really...
before?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's a very, very complicated performance, very rigorous, very physical. And so we're constantly muttering under our breath to one another if we've messed up.
You're gone now, you're gone, you're not.
That's right.
But it's great fun. And there are moments of pure delight.
Mm-hmm.
I also know that in every production, the SITI company actually engages in this special method of training called the Suzuki method. Perhaps
right.
you could elaborate to us what exactly this is and what it helps train.
Well, the Suzuki method was created by a man, Suzuki Tadashi, and his company based in Japan. And it's something we were exposed to many, many, many years ago. It is a physical training for the body and voice of the actor that ultimately ends up as a metaphysical training, because that's what the arts are for. We champion this training all over the world, and we're here teaching it to the acting and theater community in Singapore.
How has it helped you?
For me, well, I'll let you speak.
Oh, well, for me, it's the most important thing is that, as Ellen said, we've chosen to stay with this form. We were introduced to it a long time ago. And for me, as one grows older, to have one thing that you stick to over a period of time to measure yourself against is really important. So it's helped me to sustain a kind of life in the theater. Beyond the practical issues it's just very rigorous and demanding. So physically it's demanding, vocally it's demanding, and it makes you work on your breath.
Give us an example of something you would do.
Oh, well, I can't give you an example, really. If you looked at it, it would look very classical. The vocabulary draws from vocabularies of classical dance and traditional Japanese theatrical forms, and it's very aerobic and percussive. So, and it can look a little martial, I would say, in that sense. You know, it's very rigorous in its form. So it demands a great deal of you. You have to meet it. You know,
Sounds like a lot of physical,
it's a lot of
physical training itself as well.
Physical training, yes.
Yeah.
In addition to that, we also do a thing called the viewpoints, which is based out of the postmodern dance world, which is more of an improvisational form dealing with the body and space. So it's very complementary. It's symbiotic, these two trainings.
Well, after you have done this play, or when you came in touch with this play, has your perception of death changed?
That's such a great question.
After being involved?
Great question. I don't know how to answer that.
It does change for me every time we encounter this performance again. And I do think about it, and I do deepen my conversation with it. Have I come to any conclusive feelings about death, my own, my loved ones? No, it's constantly in flux. It's a constant conversation. But I'm awake to it now, certainly by doing this piece.
Yeah. The Ploughman learns to make peace. And for me, personally, in the performance of it, meeting it over 2 years now, it seems like learning how to make peace with whatever is going on seems to be the issue. And so for me, that's kind of a lesson. It's a daily lesson, you know. So it's a luxury to be able to actually meet it so frequently. Yeah.
Okay, there you go, the Ploughman. And
Ploughman, and well, we've been speaking to actors Ellen Lauren and Will Bond, and if you're interested in hearing and watching the play, well, Death and the Ploughman will be performed from the 2nd to the 4th of June at the Drama Centre.
that's right. And for those of you who want to know more about the techniques behind the play, well, director Anne Borgata and the members of the SITI company will conduct an international theatre workshop till the 4th of June. So do look into that if you're interested.
That's right. You can just drop an email to the address right there at the bottom of your screen. I think it's ttrp@practice.org.sg.
All right, we'll leave you now with some pictures of the play from Death and the Ploughman, and we'll see you back in a couple of minutes with more news.